Hello and welcome to a Mugful of Marketing, your regular dose of brews and views from across the world of marketing. We are Barnaby and James from 199, a marketing agency in Leeds. And on this week's episode, we're offering a guide to networking and conferences, how to market yourself. So James and I have been attending networking events and conferences for the last 15 years at least. It's how I built my freelance business. It's how you've generated a lot of business too.
Yep, it's how most of my music industry connections have come about, I'd say.
Yeah, and we've got a couple coming up, haven't we? So where are you headed?
I'm going to Amsterdam Dance Event, or ADE, which I think is about 400,000 people go to that, so it is very big. I go there every year, and I think I've actually lost track of how many I go to, but probably been to 11 or 10.
Yeah, and then I've got the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil.
Yeah. Where's that
the
one?
Roundtable in Bangkok is in November. So, yeah, I mean, we thought is kind of relevant to how we approach these conferences from a kind of marketing the business perspective.
So, yeah, let's dive into kind of how you can market yourself at these types of events. It doesn't necessarily have to be a conference. It could just be a small-scale networking event or anything. It applies to everything from that right up to these huge international conferences.
Yeah, the principles are pretty much the same across it. Yeah, and whether you're in marketing, whether you're a business, or whether you're an artist, it's all the same approach, really. So let's go into it. How are we going to do it?
Let's talk about how you should approach these things before. So your research, what you should be doing at the event, and afterwards how you follow up and what that all looks like.
Great. Okay, so how should you prepare for a networking event or conference?
Research. The key is actually looking at what you're going to, who else will be there, and thinking about what you want to get out of it.
Mm-hmm. So looking at the conference lineup, looking at the speakers, looking at the events,
the delegates
panels,
database, that's a big one.
And the delegates database, because that delegates database, if they're not always published, but when they are, if you can do a little bit of research on the people that you want to see, you can do a bit of prep beforehand.
Yes. I would say you want to prep a schedule. Mm-hmm. It depends what the format of the event is, but you'll want to try and arrange meetings around when talks are happening at these kind of things, unless it's just an open networking event. But if it's a talks plus networking type thing, make sure you've actually got your calendar and you've got things set already. You don't want to get to the event and hope you can speak to people, because a lot of the time they'll be busy.
Yeah, they'll have done this process, and you might not be on the list. When kind of picking those, think about what their role is, and is there mutual value for a meeting? You want to talk to everyone at networking or conferences, but you don't want to meet with everyone.
No.
And there's nothing worse than you've arranged, or someone's arranged a meeting with you, and you get there and you realise they haven't done their research. You've got nothing in common. You don't really like them. You don't want to do business with them, and you're not going to refer them to anyone else.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's about mutual value and aligning with what it is that you're both trying to get out of being at the conference.
Yeah. So, but if you, in terms of the process, once you've had a look down that delegates list, get in touch with some people. Yeah. You could email them, contact them on social media, LinkedIn.
So how do you contact them? Like a lot of the time, these events have ways of contacting directly through the interfaces of the conference. Sometimes there are listed email addresses. Sometimes there's no information at all. You're just going to have to go and stalk them on LinkedIn.
But that's fine, isn't it? Because when you start stalking people in your industry on LinkedIn, you're going to find those shared connections, you're going to find those shared interests. And that's potentially going to give you something you can go on when you're arranging that meeting. So try and set up some meetings beforehand, is the tip.
So next up, let's talk elevator pitches.
So elevator pitch, what is it?
It's your ability to say what you are as a company, who you are as a person, and what your role is within it, and also an opportunity to name drop some people you've worked with.
And what value you can bring to them. What do you do? What value do you bring?
But this needs to be quick, thus elevator. You want to really get it down to a minute.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, so work on that.
Tailor it to each event as well. So I don't have one elevator pitch. I will think of something different in terms of how I present myself and talk about what I've been working on and who I am, depending on what the event is and like what industry it is and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you know, if you're name dropping, you're going to name drop artists that are relevant to them. But also in terms of the genre, in terms of the people that they might know.
But if I'm talking to someone that, you know, produces food, I'm not necessarily going to mention techno artists.
No.
So yeah, just think about that and practice it.
Yeah.
You can even do it on the plane or the train or whatever it is when you're traveling over there, but don't leave it until then. Get it written down in some bullet points and just run through it in your head.
Yeah. Another piece of research, finding out where the dedicated networking is. So all of these conferences, or not all of them, but most of them, there will be a dedicated time and space for networking. Often that's not actually at the conference itself. It could be at a hotel, it could be at a bar somewhere. It could be run by one of the sponsors. There's often social events. That's where a lot of the business is done. And those are the events you want to make sure you know about and you can get to.
Yeah. Allow for mishaps. So in your schedule, when you're putting meetings in, a lot of people tend to try and fit in as much as they can. They overstretch themselves. Meetings either overrun or people turn up late, but it's such an important meeting to you. You kind of bite the bullet and you see that person anyway. Then that bleeds into the rest of your day. Allow a little bit of time for wiggle room with these meetings and it will honestly make everything much smoother.
One of the other things you can do before an event, and before we move on to the events themselves, is to get yourself a speaking opportunity. Often conferences have panels, they've got talks. If you can get one of those, that immediately elevates your profile. It gives you a chance, obviously, to show your expertise. So that's a really valuable thing to do. We'll talk about this a bit later. Speaking at conferences is great, but you don't have to have a speaking slot to speak at.
I mean, it's possibly an episode in itself as that, isn't it? But yeah, if you can't speak at a conference, make yourself visible during the panel talks, put a point of view across, ask a question. It's a good way to set up an introduction after the panel or the talk.
Ask an intelligent question.
Intelligent question. But
yeah.
It's only intelligent questions that come out of my mouth. Lies.
Okay, so at the event itself, you've got to the networking or you've got to the conference. What do you do?
So turn up on time. You know, I think punctuality is just so important. Yeah.
Well, lateness says so much about you. If you're trying to do business with someone and you turn up late for that first meeting...
It's a screening process.
Is there, isn't it, that you can't deliver things on time?
It's a screening process for me. If someone like cancels my meeting really late or is super late for it for no real reason and without communicating, it says everything I need to know about what it would be like to work with them when you're really busy deep in a campaign.
Yeah.
It's a red flag. So
massively.
People are late for meetings for genuine reasons. If that is you, communicate it as early as you can and be clear, apologise, all of the stuff that basic human beings would do when they're late for something. But yeah, don't just leave it until the meeting's meant to start. It's awful practice is that, but it happens all the time.
So I've walked into the networking event. So I guess I just get out my business card and then shout my elevator pitch at everyone.
Yeah, scream at people, just shout your services.
Just
start
listing
them. Yeah.
And then just thrust my business card into their hand and then just start talking at them. Yes. Is that how it works?
Don't do that. Don't be that guy. You need to work the room a bit. Like if someone's already speaking to someone, don't just cut in like that. That might be their last meeting overrunning. Kind of like hang back a little bit. You can make it so that it's obvious that you're there and, you know, introduce yourself at the right time in a gap in the conversation. But yeah.
And don't start selling straight away. Like there's nothing worse than those people who come up and are just like, right, well, I'm whoever. Yeah. Here's my business card, and I do this. What do you do? Oh, you do marketing. I don't need marketing. And then they go somewhere else. It's like, it's not how it works.
It's also not where the value of networking events is.
No, not at all. You're not just networking with the people. You're gaining access to other people's networks. People buy from people that they like, know, and trust.
I think you do far better treating it as a friend-making exercise.
Talk about anything other than work. Find those connections that, as if you were meeting someone new. And that's something that you can build on later as well.
Also, don't just view each meeting as the outcome of that meeting being the result of its value.
No.
Because the amount of people I've met as satellites from that initial meeting has been priceless over the years.
Far outweighs it. I mean, I have got direct business to you. I've met someone at a networking event and the next week you're working with them. But that is the exception rather than the rule.
Absolutely.
Either you have to meet them multiple times and have conversations and build it up, or often they are the people who refer you to one of their network who needs your services. So, think about the wider picture rather than just who's in the room. And just build an actual connection. People buy from people.
Yeah, so with that in mind as well, where are the best places at these kind of events to strike up these relationships? I'm going to throw it out there and say the bar is pretty good.
Head to the bar afterwards. Always head to the bar afterwards, because the conference is over. People are wanting to relax a bit. They've had a drink.
Yeah.
They're a bit more open, and you can get a real feel for who they are.
Yeah.
That is where more of the business is done. Yeah, and that's why lots of the kind of local networking events tend to be just in bars.
And not in the official schedule.
Yeah.
So that's something else to be aware of, is have a word if you know there's anyone else going to these events. Ask around and see what they're thinking or where they're going. It helps you get a gauge of what is going to be popular and what the it spot is in terms of where you kind of need to be having the right conversations.
Now, I've had a few beers. I've met hundreds of people. How do you make sure that you stand out and I remember you tomorrow morning when I'm searching through my business cards and my new LinkedIn connections?
Well, I mean, I don't do business cards.
No.
I have them.
No one does business cards.
I think I might even potentially have some on me at these events, but I can remember how many I've handed out. It's not that many. I tend to just email people on the spot and try and be memorable in that moment and use that moment as an opportunity to market yourself and be memorable. So, for instance, I ask people what their email address is. I type it in and I say, right, I'm going to send you an email now with a balloon emoji in the subject line. And they look at you very confused. And I say, you're going to remember me when you see this in your inbox tomorrow morning. And it's a conversation starter for the next day when you follow up with it, or, when you get back from the conference. And I've honestly always had follow-on conversations as a result of that.
Well, being memorable is important because you are meeting a lot of different people, and you're probably meeting a lot of different people who are similar.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, so doing something to stand out in the right ways is a...
Exactly. You don't have to do what I just said, but it's more just about, making yourself memorable, I think.
Okay, so finally, the event's over, the conference is over, you've headed home, you're back at work. What do you do now?
It's back to that. Don't expect the instant transactions. I think some people come back and they're a bit of a pest. It's good. Make sure the conversation stays warm. Mm-hmm. So follow up with people, maybe like callback style, reference something that you've talked about. Mm-hmm. Just so that you've got somewhere to go with it and they remember who you are, because you will be forgotten quite quickly if you don't follow up at all.
Yeah, because people are busy. Well, you know what it's like when you get back to work, you've been to a conference, you haven't been working on your usual work for 3 days, a week. You've got loads to do, and it's very easy for these things to fall by the wayside. And
absolutely,
you lose a lot of the value that way.
So think about what value you can offer them as well. Mm-hmm. There might have been something that's come up in the conversation regarding like an introduction or a service or something fun and that you talked about that you can actually send them. Maybe there's a track or a video or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is. Each conversation is obviously completely different, but personalize your follow-up with them. Say that it's great to meet them.
I mean, you can personalize it. You can also put it into a system. So make sure that you've got a list of the people that you spoke to. You've got their contact details. And this can be, I mean, at the most basic in a Excel, I would highly recommend using a CRM system instead. And then putting some dates in when you're going to contact them.
And notes. So what I do when I get back is in a spreadsheet, I will have the people that I've met and some notes about the conversations I've had with them. And that really helps then with any kind of follow-up. Just so you've got some talking points to start with, because you'll probably forget yourself what you spoke about otherwise.
Okay.
So I think that's a big one. I think, so don't expect anything immediate. Nurture that relationship, because it might be that it's somebody that they know that will be your next business lead or, introduction.
Remember, it's a long game as well. These things can take months and, 6 months down the line.
But when should people follow up after these things? Should it be straight away? Should it be like, what's your kind of rule with these things?
I like to follow up the next day, but only with something very soft.
Yes.
Generally, just to...
Unless they've asked for something specific.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I've been asked directly, I want to see your show reel, I want to see your deck. So I will send that to them.
Yeah.
You don't need to hold it back.
But
I agree.
Then I might follow up with them a week later if they haven't replied. Then maybe a month later if they haven't replied. And if they haven't replied after that, probably don't want to speak to me.
Yeah.
And I'll probably take them off the list.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think that probably covers it, doesn't it? Just in terms of the plug, once again, that...
Well, yeah, so if you're one of the 400,000 people going out to Amsterdam in October for Amsterdam Dance Event, then by all means, let us know. Be good to say hello to our viewers.
If you're one of the dozens of people,
our loyal subscribers.
And no, there'll be hundreds there. It's a big conference. Then, again, please come and say hello. And thanks for joining us on this episode of A Mugful of Marketing. Join us next time for more Brews and Views.
See you next time.